Greetings 94th, this is Beaker 1-2 here for the ELP practical video. So today we're using the Spitfire Mark II Tier 3 aircraft. So we're going to be demonstrating the ELPs that I just talked about in the last video. We're going to do a circular ELP pattern and straight-in pattern. So we'll show you a little bit of that stuff. First off, so as I start taking off here, I'm using raised flaps, just because the Spitfire doesn't really need any takeoff flaps. It doesn't have an option for that, actually. I talked about rotate speed and best glide speed, which you really need to know for engine out procedures. So let's see what the rotate speed of this is. Looks like it took off just about 100 miles per hour there by itself. So I'm cleaning up the airframe, getting the gear up. When I was practicing here earlier, best glide I used about 120, 130 miles per hour, stuff for that. So pretty good as is. This aircraft climbs pretty well. Anyway, that's what stuff I keep in mind for engine out type of stuff. Know your airplane just a little bit, so notice these things on takeoff if you're using a different plane, etc. I'm also going to go ahead and demonstrate a controllability check. So say you just got out of a fight. We're kind of working our way out right now at the moment. You just got out of a fight, and you're trying to make sure things work. You're going to be playing with your throttle, so if you're having a hard time controlling the airplane as is, you might throttle back a little bit, see if you have more controllability of the aircraft that way. Checking your ailerons, see if you got full movement of those. You want to definitely know your elevator control. Elevator is something that kind of breaks a lot in the game, because you're getting shot up, and it can really screw you on your approach. You might cycle your gear too, like I'm doing, gear and flaps. Always remember to throttle up just a little bit to maintain altitude that way. So it looks like everything looks good. Stuff's working right. And you might make sure that that's taken care of. So we're about at our ELP altitude here, and we'll come around and I'll show you high key. We'll do that. But for all else, for controllability as well, say you're having problems maintaining altitude, so your aircraft just wants to climb, you know, because your elevators are jacked up. What you might do is use your ailerons to turn the aircraft about 80 or 90 degrees and kill that lift, because your aircraft needs more lift to do turns, and so it's going to demand more lift, and when you do that, it's just going to help kill it. So I'm doing that again here to demonstrate just a nice turn. It's just slicing the sky like that. That's a good way to help maintain your altitude as well. If you have elevator failure, playing with engine settings is really helpful. It's going to determine how fast your aircraft is. The faster your aircraft is, the more lift it produces. So essentially, if you have no elevator control, you want to limit the amount of lift it's controlling. So I'm trying to get my distance here from the airfield, about a half nautical mile. We're really high, actually, so I'm going to go kill some of that. But yeah, so you want to make sure you do that. Combat flaps. This aircraft doesn't have combat flaps, or else I would show you that. But power setting and combat flaps help determine your ability to maintain an altitude a little bit, which is good. So try it out with different airplanes. Make sure that you have this taken care of for especially elevator control problems. So what we're going to do here, I'm about a high key altitude. High key altitude for this airfield is 8,000 feet. Sorry, 1,800 feet. And so I'm going to bring in the aircraft over my 1/3 point of the runway for that, and we'll demonstrate the ELP. So I'm a little bit high, but I'm going to come in at about your cruising altitude, or sorry, cruising speed, and or whatever you decide with your controllability check, because that's important. If you have to come in slower, then that's the way you come in. And especially with controllability with an engine issue, you want to make sure that you are prepared to come in with a engine lost. So having your glide speed set properly. So I'm about at my 1/3 point right about now. Or sorry, I'm coming into the airfield. When you have an aircraft malfunction, you want to choose the longest runway available. This was huge. This one will do nicely for us. So I'm about my 1/3 point down the runway. Oh no, engine failure. So I'm about at high key right now. So I'm coming on in, and I'm doing my nice turn away. You want to try to do about your half nautical mile distance from the airfield as you roll out. Checking below here, I got about 1,000 feet per minute lost, the lower right hand corner there. This aircraft likes to climb a lot. Actually, it's very maneuverable, so I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to lose altitude. Right about here, I should be at 1,000 feet. I'm about 500 feet high. So a lot of ELPs are flown in more oval shaped patterns. Extend downwind, essentially, but don't extend too far or you'll miss coming in. The point is I have zero throttle or zero thrust available to me. So I want to maintain, an ability to bring her in. So I'm a bit slow, so I'm speeding up a little bit. I'm at about low key right now. So I want to start turning in. I'm doing about 120 is about what I want to do. Nice leisurely turn, bring her in. And then when landing is assured, you want to deploy your gear and your flaps. So I'd say about landing is assured. I'm a little bit fast, but we got lots of runway here available to us. Normally we'd land right at the threshold. So I'm going to deploy my gear and my flaps. Make sure the aircraft doesn't bubble up when you deploy your gear and flaps, because I'm kind of doing that right now. So I just gained altitude just by deploying flaps, and I'm really slow. So you want to make sure you maintain that airspeed. So I'm trying to speed up a little bit, so I've got a little bit of control. I'm rounding out. A little bit of a hard landing, but it came in good. Not bad. And we had easily half of a runway plus left available to us. So lots of room for error here, which is what you want in an ELP. Yay! All right. So let's crank her up again, and I'll demonstrate a straight in. So we didn't have to do any repairs there. That was good. That's exactly what you want. That's the perfect type of ELP recovery from high key. So let's go ahead and start taking off. Note the rotation speed again to help for your approaches. Now, you don't have to approach the airfield from high key. High key is an ideal position. You have the altitude available to you as the engine quits or when the engine quits. So say your engine quits at 20,000 feet or something, and you're gliding in from like 5 to 10 miles away from the airfield. You could do high key from there. Now say your engine quits and you're only at about 1,000 feet, you can approach low key. So you could just come on in for your base turn and land like you normally would in an overhead pattern. I won't demonstrate that for the sake of time, but I mean that's how you would approach if you were too low and you knew you couldn't make high key. And air traffic controllers and stuff all over the place know what high and low key is. So if this were a real legit situation, you'd say, hey, you're going to declare an emergency. So it's like I have an engine failure, emergency, and then I would like to approach the airfield from high key, low key, whatever. So they could go ahead and be prepared for your approach. Anyway, so I'm going to demonstrate a straight-in. Straight-in landings are what you'd use for every other emergency, honestly. Things like elevator failures, for sure. You have problems with your ailerons or your rudder, so type of controllability or surface issues of the aircraft. As you can see, I got really good distance from the airfield right now. Nice. Anyway, so I'm going to come in at about 1,000 feet, so I'm a little bit high, but I'm going to extend downwind and lose a little bit of altitude. Anyway, what you want to do, I'm going to demonstrate the fact that your gear or your flaps have failed and stuff like that, and I'm going to do a belly landing. So let's deploy the gear, your flaps for your normal controllability check. Now, so the plane wants to float up now that I do these things. Yay, everything looks like it works. So, but but we're assuming the fact that all that's broke. So the aircraft dropped once I got rid of those flaps, if you saw that. So aerodynamics plays a little bit of part in this, especially for your engine out. Wait to deploy your flaps and gear when landing is assured, and you'll be fine, essentially. Alright, so about 1,000 feet, if I can here, we're simulating the fact that my gear has failed. So for straight ins, normally you'd approach just as you would. For this one, because we're landing on the airframe itself, we want to limit how much damage there is. So we want to have a very slow airspeed if we can help it. Try not to bounce along the runway or do any like type of pitching a lot. I'm actually about idle right now just because I'm fast and I want to get rid of all this airspeed. So because the airframe is taking the stress of this landing, the belly landing, yeah, you want to get rid of as much airspeed as you can to make the landing as soft as possible. So you're going to have to maybe pitch up a little bit into almost a stall to get rid of all this extra airspeed. So I'm coming in, I'm going to start pitching up just a little bit. I got a long runway, so I got lots of space here to burn this airspeed. So as you can see, I'm right over the ground pretty much. And this aircraft is very stable, so it wants to continue flying even at this low airspeed, which sucks. So coming in, pitch, and it still wants to fly. Yep. There you go. And you even want to have up elevator as you land like that. Try to keep the nose from digging into the ground so you don't flip or something like that. Looks like the main damage was the engine. Could have been worse. But the rest of the aircraft survived structurally. We were about, I want to say 118 or so when we landed. So we were about glide speed-ish and decreasing. So maybe you want to come in a little bit slower. We still had half of the runway left, at least. So a very long runway. If you're a bigger airplane, you might be faster coming in, so you want to cut your engines farther out. So straight-in landings are your other option for recovery, any type of recovery. So manage your engine power, your flaps, your gear accordingly, and essentially come in like you normally would. It's the most effective emergency pattern you can do in War Thunder, but for engine outs, you know, that's something you want to consider as altitude. I also have a couple other videos that were real in-game type of emergencies. One is like an ELP-ish looking pattern I did, and another one was an unsuccessful long straight-in. So when you're doing your approaches, do not stretch your glide. And by stretch, I mean demand more G's than the aircraft is willing to give, kind of like in the stall video, where it's going to bleed off all your speed and you're just going to kind of stall. The reason it's your best glide speed is because it's the best distance per altitude you're losing. So maintaining the speed of your aircraft is one way to successfully land. Well, that's it for me, guys. I've got two sort of related ELP videos that I just mentioned that will be attached in the comments below. So there's the academic portion we just covered, as well as the practical portion we just demonstrated here. If you have any questions, comments, rude noises, hit me up. And I hope you enjoyed this video. This is Beaker 1-2 from the 94th Fighter Squadron signing off.